listening to the Touch 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and on today's episode, we have UFC 302 Makhachev versus Poirier preview, predictions, and breakdown. Now, this card does not take place this weekend. We have a week off, but I'm going to put this card up a week early. These fights take place on Saturday, June 1st from the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. The main event for the lightweight championship is the man coming off of a second-round KO of Benoit Saint Denis in the number 4 ranked former interim lightweight champion in Dustin the Diamond Poirier, taking on the current reigning, defending lightweight champion coming off of a first-round head kick KO of Alexander the Great Volkanovski in Islam Makhachev. Then in the co-main event of the evening, you have a battle in the middleweight division between the former UFC middleweight champion in Sean Tarzan Strickland taking on Paulo the Eraser Costa, who is currently ranked number 7 at 185 pounds. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, guys. Exactly like the title of the video lets you know, we're back a week early for UFC 302 Makhachev versus Poirier preview, predictions, and breakdown. Last week we did pretty good, mainly on the prelims. Again, the main card we didn't do the greatest. I think we ended up going like 8-4, 8 out of 12 correct picks. Some of the ones we missed were underdogs, like Carlston Harris, where he just got knocked out in his shootout. I feel like he could have done better, but he should have gone for the takedowns like right out the gate. Landed a couple shots and went for a takedown, but there wasn't really any time for that. But I mean, coming into this card, I think this card is pretty solid. I think there's a lot of really good betting opportunities, but I'm mainly going to just break down the overall picks and predictions for each fight. I'm not going to break down every fight. I skipped the Jocelyn Edwards and Eileen Perez fight. I just didn't feel like spending time on it. I'm going to be completely honest with you, but we did hit Ariane Carnelossi to win in round 2, thanks to that DQ at like plus 1900. And then I had a bet on Ducote KO 2-3, but instead of betting who I should have, which was Melissa Gatto by KO 2-3, I didn't. I had Angela Hill to win in round 3. We were 42 seconds away from getting that one correct, because I'm pretty sure if it went to round 3, she would have gotten a finish, and that was at 24-1. So, you know, my fault. I should have played round 2 and round 3. I probably could have gotten a round 2 at like plus 2100, which is pretty close, and she got that guillotine choke. And you know what's crazy? I was going to bet Melissa Gatto KO 2-3, and then I was going to do Angela Hill submission 2-3, because I think everybody was predicting more of a knockout than a submission. But in my head, I thought, like, if she gets tired, if she gets beat up, she might just shoot a panic takedown. And that's exactly what happened. It just came a little bit less than a minute early. But we're going to move on to this card for 302, and we're going to kick it off with the first fight up with a road to UFC winner in Niam Jargal Tumendemburo. Niam Jargal Tumendemburo. I think I'm saying his name right. His nickname is the Art of Knockout. The Art of Knockout, Niam Jargal Tumendemburo. Let me try that again. Niam Jargal, the Art of Knockout, Tumendemburo, taking on Andre Lima. Moscato, I believe, is his nickname. I see a lot of people heavy on Lima. I was one of the guys who picked Igor da Silva to beat Andre Lima, and honestly, I think he was on his way to doing so. The first round was close, but the takedowns, the top pressure, I think he had a big advantage on the ground, and I was pretty surprised when, you know, he obviously decided to take a chunk out of Lima's arm, and then Lima got a tattoo replicating it. But looking at this fight, we know that the more technical striker is Moscato in Andre Lima. We know he's going to be staying on the outside, trying to use pull counters, a pull counter right hand, you know, pull back counter with the left hook, 1-2s down the middle. But man, I watched this guy in Niam Jargal, and let me tell you something. This dude is a madman. I mean, he comes forward, he gets in your face, he throws down, but the thing is, he's technical inside of his madness. He's dangerous enough to give a technical guy like Lima trouble, because Lima wins fights where he can kind of dictate the range, dictate the pace, stay on the outside, control the range, use the jab to control the distance, jab, left hook, low kick, 1-2, pull counter, 2-3, low kick, front kick to the body. He does better in like a point fighting style of fight. He also has a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You saw him go for omoplatas against Severino. You saw him try to set up a guillotine choke. I think that Niam Jargal is the perfect style of fighter to beat a guy like Lima. He does get hit. He kind of comes in reckless, but there was a fight on the road to UFC where this guy threw like 27 punches at his opponent, and then he tripped out his leg after he was destroying him. I think he caught him with a big uppercut, a right hook, a left hook, a 1-2. He caught him, hurt him, rocked him like 3 times, then chased him down, tripped out his leg, and then took a rear naked choke and choked him unconscious to the point where he face planted. This guy, Niam Jargal, is legit. He's undefeated, just like Andre Lima. He comes into the fight with, let me pull this up real quick because for some reason my browser closed on me for where I wanted to go. Here we go. He's 8-0. Andre Lima also 8-0. And looking at it from like a stylistic perspective, I really think Niam Jargal has like the perfect storm to beat a guy like Lima. Now you look at Tumen Dembrel's record, 8-0, but the guys he's beating, 5-2, 9-4, 4-0, and then 0-0 with the rear naked choke. Andre Lima defeats Igor Severino, but it was by DQ. Beats Rickson Zenadim on the Contender Series via decision, who was 14-0 at the time. Beats Igor Talin, who's 7-2. Beats Alexander Rodriguez by KO, who was 4-2, and then beats Natan Ziel, who was 4-0. So records, I would say Lima has fought the better competition, but I think his style of fight kind of plays right into the game of the madness of Niam Jargal. I think the Art of Knockout, which is a crazy nickname, I think that's a badass nickname. I think his overhands, uppercuts, 1-2s down the middle, if he doesn't give Andre Lima the respect that Lima needs to complete a game plan and a style like he employs in the octagon, I think he can really just beat him on volume, landing big shots. He's going to be there for the counter, and there's always going to be the chance he counters him with a step-in elbow, counters him with a pullback right hand, and hurts him. There is that chance that Niam Jargal gets hurt, gets rocked, hit with a big shot and gets dropped and maybe gets submitted. But I actually like Niam Jargal a lot here. I think he has the style to beat a technician like Lima. He can go for submissions. He's not afraid to throw up submissions if the fight goes to the ground. He has good jiu-jitsu defense where he might get taken down, but he'll scramble, look for leg locks, roll into leg locks off of arm bars. This guy is looking for a finish, and he's not a guy where if Lima decides to resort to the wrestling because the striking isn't working, he's not a guy that's going to, just sit on his back and surrender position and give up time on the clock. Yes, he got taken down in his fight on the road to UFC. The second fight, he got taken down and, lost the 3rd round because he got tired. But I think Lima is going to play that technical Muay Thai style, and he's going to get clipped with those big looping wide shots. I do worry a little bit about the defense. There is a chance that the counters of Lima can catch Niam Jargal, but as an overall mixed martial artist, I actually really like Niam Jargal here in this fight. Niam Jargal, let me say his last name again. Tumen Dembrel. Niam Jargal, Tumen Dembrel. I'm going to go with him. I'm going to go with the Art of Knockout to win this fight. I think he wins it actually by... I think he gets a KO. I think he has that style of just walking forward, still being technical, but just coming forward with big, heavy shots, heavy volume, has knockout power in his own right, so it's not like the only fighter with knockout power is Lima, and I think that the forward pressure, the combinations, the ability to mix in the grappling, if he gets taken down, can throw up submissions, I think the activity and the overall well-rounded game of Niam Jargal is going to carry him to a knockout victory here. I'm going to go with Art of Knockout. Niam Jargal, Tumen Dembrel to get the job done via a 2nd round TKO against Andre Lima. I see a lot of people heavy on Lima. I'm not sold on him just yet. I picked him on the Contender Series. I think he's a good fighter. I think he has a lot of promise, but I think he loses this one. I think Jargal is a lot better than people are giving him credit for. So give me the underdog in Jargal, Tumen Dembrel, the art of knockout, to get the job done via a second-round TKO against Andre Lima. All right, up next, we've got a battle in the welterweight division between the man who defeated CM Punk in his UFC debut in Mickey Gall, then went out and choked out the UFC's cash cow at the time in Sage Northcutt, taking on Basil Hafez, who comes in with a record of 8 victories, 4 losses, and 1 no contest, who arguably could have beaten Jack Della Maddalena via decision, lost that fight via a split decision on short notice. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys here. Unless Basil Hafez just gasses himself out, beating the absolute shit out of Mickey Gall for like the first round, round and a half, 2 rounds, this should be Hafez's fight. I worry about his gas tank, but I know he's technical. I know he's durable. I know he's very strong. And the areas where Mickey Gall does well, mainly with takedowns, top control, taking the back, getting a submission, I think Hafez is going to be wise enough to defend if he gets put in those bad positions, be able to control Mickey Gall if he gets, takedowns of his own, and be much stronger and more powerful with ground and pound if he's the one on top versus Gall being the one on top. I worry about the gas tank like I just mentioned, but I think I only worry about that when we get to the midpoint of the second round and into the third round, and I do not think we get that far in this fight with Mickey Gall. Gall did very well against Punk, did real good against Sage Northcutt, but other than that, did not really look good in his UFC career. Lost to Diego Sanchez via just getting completely destroyed and dominated with takedowns, ground and pound, and he didn't have a gas tank to push against the veteran who at that point was kind of just a walking corpse. He wasn't as bad as maybe like a year or two ago, but still, it wasn't the best days of Diego Sanchez, and he turned back the clock against Gall. Then Gall gets knocked out viciously by Mike Malott. We've seen Mickey Gall get chinned a few times, and I think Hafez is very live for a knockout or ground and pound leading to a submission if he gets the top position. I think this fight goes under 2.5 rounds. I don't think it goes the full distance, and I really like Basil Hafez. He's a huge favorite, but I think he's technical enough on the feet. He throws big power. He's not going to be super duper, over aggressive and leave himself open to get countered. I don't necessarily think Gall has the finishing power to really stunt the forward pressure and offense of Hafez. I think Hafez can walk forward, work the body, work the low kicks, throw big right hands, big left hooks, get takedowns of his own, defend the potential guillotines and submission attempts of Gall off of his back, and then I think he eventually just takes him down, beats him up on the feet, gets top position, and gets a ground and pound TKO in round 2. It could even be round 1, but I'm going to go with Basil Hafez via finish here. I think he is going to be able to walk through really anything that Mickey Gall has to offer, defend the submissions, land big shots on the feet, get a takedown, land some ground and pound, and just eventually ground and pound him into submission, but not into a submission. So give me Basil Hafez to get the job done here against Mickey Gall via second round ground and pound TKO. I think this is a pretty, self-explanatory pick here. Up next, we've got a rematch years in the making in the 170-pound division between Nico the Hybrid Price and Alex the Great White Morono. Listen, this isn't going to be a very long breakdown either. These guys fought each other back in, I think it was 2016, 2017, and Morono was winning the fight. He was dictating the pace, landing more shots, not landing a ton of volume, but just outlanding Nico Price, who wasn't really doing much. Nico Price started to get the timing of Morono, started to land some shots of his own, hurt him at the end of the second round, and then caught him with a big right hook. I think it was a left hook, actually. No, it was a right hook. A right hook right to the side of the temple when he was up against the cage and knocked Morono out cold at the buzzer, and then the fight was declared a second-round TKO win for Nico Price. I honestly see the fight kind of playing out the same way. There's not too many things I see being totally different from the first fight. I do think that the fighter who's gotten better from that fight till now is Alex Morono. I think the more well-rounded fighter is Alex Morono. I think he has chin issues. I think he still has chin issues and durability issues up to this point. I think he should have clearly beaten a guy like Court McGee, and not only beat him, but finished him. And he goes on to lose that fight via decision, or I mean, make it 15 minutes against Court McGee, who, yes, is a veteran, but isn't really known as a finisher. If anything, he gets finished, so I don't think that was a good look on the side of Morono. And I think Niko Price is going to get clipped. He can get hurt. Morono can knock him out. I mean, Morono dropped him like 4 times in the first fight. I think it could be very similar to this, or very similar to the first time out, where Morono clips him with a big check hook, big right hand, maybe lands a head kick. But I think eventually Niko Price just continues to walk through those shots and lands a big shot of his own, whether it's like an up elbow, an uppercut, I don't know, a spinning back fist. Like, he's going to land something awkward, a knee up the middle, an up kick if he gets taken down. And I think he TKOs Alex Morono again. Morono is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Niko Price is 1-3-1 no contest, or 1 draw, whatever it was. I think that was the fight against Donald Cerrone that went to a draw. But I mean, honestly, in this fight, I think I'm going to go with the guy who won the first time. I think maybe the smarter pick is Morono, but I don't think you can trust a guy like Alex Morono, even being a decently sized favorite. I don't think that you can trust him in this spot. And I think at plus 210, if I was going to bet it, I would bet on Niko Price, and I would bet on Niko Price by a finish. And mainly, I mean, a big part of it is based off of the durability issues of Morono. Price has them as well, but that performance against Court McGee, I mean, he won the fight, but did he really? Wait, did he win that fight or lose it? Because I don't want to say the wrong thing. Okay, he won the fight via decision, but I think that was a fight where he should have finished. I said he lost it earlier. I'm wrong, so I'm correcting myself. But he won the fight, but it was a decision against Court McGee where, yes, the guy's durable, but we've seen that guy get knocked out before. And I think that was a fight where Morono should have kind of dominated that fight and found a finish at some point in the first couple rounds. And I think that was a gimme for an under 2.5 rounds, and obviously it didn't go that way. But I like Niko Price here. I think he's wild enough, wacky enough, and crazy enough to find another finish, just like the first fight. Morono on paper should win, but I just don't have a lot of faith in Alex Morono, whether he's an underdog or a favorite. I've backed him in fights where I shouldn't have, and I've picked against him in fights where he's proven me wrong. I don't have the greatest read on Morono, but I think Niko Price finds a knockout in this one. I think it's going to be like a big knee, or, like I said, a spinning back fist, something in the middle of an exchange. I'll say he lands like a back fist that rocks Morono and then follows up with some punches and puts him down. So give me Niko the hybrid Price as the plus 210 underdog to defeat Alex the Great White Morono via a second round TKO in this fight. I'll go Niko Price second round knockout against Alex Morono. Up next, we have a battle in the welterweight division between Fusion XL's Phil the Fresh Prince Rowe, coming in with a record of 10 victories and 4 defeats, coming off the decision loss to Neil Magny, taking on Jake the Celtic Kid Matthews, coming in with a record of 19 victories and 7 defeats. I think this is one of the hardest fights to pick on the entire card. I really do. I think on the feet, the fighter with more power is Jake Matthews, but the cleaner, more technical fighter, the fighter who uses his reach and range better, is Phil Rowe. I mean, you got a 73-inch reach for Jake Matthews to an 80.5-inch reach for Phil Rowe. The one thing I wouldn't recommend for Rowe is to do what he did in the Neil Magny fight, which is clinch, push him up against the cage, try to control the fight, because I think the fighter with better grappling is Jake Matthews. The fighter with better wrestling, better jiu-jitsu, both offensively and defensively, is Jake Matthews, and that's something that scares me, because I think Matthews can land some big shots on the feet, including, big hooks, big 1-2s down the middle. He throws the 1-2 to the body, left hook up top. And Rowe, being so tall and rangy, he knows how to use his range, but he has that tall man defense that we talk about with a lot of tall fighters, where they don't really have good fundamental defense, and they kind of just lean back, pull away, leave their chin in the air and pull back. And I think if Matthews can get on the inside, land across to the body, land a big left hook up top, land a big uppercut up the middle, land an overhand right. We've seen Phil Rowe get hurt. We saw Phil Rowe get hurt by the guy we just talked about in Nico Price and get rocked in round 3, but then come back and then get a vicious TKO, basically a standing TKO after he survived being rocked. So I think Rowe makes some questionable decisions when it comes to overall fight IQ, but I think this is a fight that's basically a coin flip where if it's mainly a striking matchup, I favor the power on the side of Matthews, but I favor the technical, fundamental boxing, the use of the jab, the use of the 1-2, and putting combinations together. I favor that on the side of Phil Rowe, who comes in as the underdog, but I think Jake Matthews probably should use his grappling, takedowns, probably inside and outside trips, push him up against the cage, double legs. I think Matthews has much better grappling, but I think Matthews is a fighter where when he should win these fights and he's a big favorite, he doesn't come through. And then in fights where he should lose and looks like he's going to get dominated as an underdog, he looks like the best he's ever looked. So I think Matthews is a fighter where you can't really get a great read on him, just like the guy we just talked about in Alex Morono. Some very big similarities between Morono and Price, and then Rowe and Matthews. Not so much stylistically, but just the overall storylines when you look at the fight on paper. I think Phil Rowe is going to land his jab. He's going to land his 1-2. I think if the fight stays at range, Phil Rowe's going to be the one dictating the pace, dictating the range, using his jab, poking and prodding at Jake Matthews, landing 1-2s, landing the shots to the body. But Jake Matthews against Michael Morales, where he was, going up against another undefeated fighter, he found his way in on him, landed some big shots, crossed the body, left hook up top, overhand right, 1-2 down the middle, cross into the left hook. He was able to get on the inside and land against another tall, long, rangy guy, but it's just a little bit different with Phil Rowe. I'm worried. I wouldn't really bet on this fight too much. I think if it's a finish on the ground, it comes from Jake Matthews finding a submission, getting on top, taking the back. But, Phil Rowe does train with Mike Beast Boy Davis, who's looked amazing in the UFC. And although Phil Rowe hasn't looked as good as Mike Davis, he still has some promise, I believe. And I think Phil Rowe's going to get this done. I'm not extremely confident in it, but I think Phil Rowe gets this done by decision. I think he defends submissions, is going to be harder to take down than people think. I wouldn't be surprised if Matthews took him down and got a sub, but I think he's going to be able to defend. I think he's going to land those jabs, catch Jake Matthews coming in, closing the distance, and I think he really picks it up in the midpoint of the second, going into the third round. The first round and a half is close. Could go either way. Maybe he loses the first round getting taken down, but survives, submissions and ground and pound, and finds a way to come back into the fight and then steal those last 2 rounds. So I am going to pick Phil the Fresh Prince Rowe to get the job done here against Jake Matthews. I'm going to go with a 29-28 split decision. I think it's going to be a close fight. Like I said, I don't love betting on it, but I'm going to go with the longer, taller, rangier fighter. Even though he makes some questionable fight IQ decisions, I like the game that Phil Rowe brings to the table. I like his, reliance on fundamentals and basics, and he has really solid boxing, man. The jab, the 1-2, putting combinations together like he did when he finished Nico Price. Give me Phil Rowe as the underdog to get the job done here. 29-28 split decision. Maybe a late finish, but I'll go that it goes to the scorecards. Up next, you've got a battle in the lightweight division between Grant Dawson, coming off of his first loss in the UFC via a first-round knockout against Bobby King Green, taking on Joe Selii, 13-4. Grant Dawson, 20 victories, 2 defeats, 1 no contest. Seleki's coming off that, slam knockout against Jargal close. And I think this fight should go to Grant Dawson. I'm going to be honest. Dawson, his grappling, his wrestling, his top control, his ability to control position against Damir Ismagulov really impressed me because I was very high on Damir, going into the Arman Sarukian fight, and the way that Dawson just dominated that fight with takedowns, controlling him, maintaining position. It was very impressive. And I think that it goes into this fight saying, I think the better submission artist between Selii and Damir Ismagulov would be Joe Selii, but I think the better wrestler in this fight is Grant Dawson, and I think he's going to be able to dictate the pace. I think the better striker on the feet is Joe Selii. I don't think Seleki's a great striker. I think he has durability issues, but also Grant Dawson has durability issues because we don't normally see Bobby Green knock people out, and Bobby Green clipped him in the first round and literally knocked him out. It wasn't a TKO. He went out from that shot early in round 1. So, you know, you do have to have some concerns with the durability of Grant Dawson. Would I lay money on Dawson as a huge favorite going into this fight? I think he's minus 300. Yeah, minus 320 to plus 250 on Selii. No, I wouldn't. I would not lay money on Dawson as a huge favorite when he got knocked out in the first round. I think Selii has good boxing. He puts his combinations together pretty well. Good cross, good left hook, good jab into a check hook. Uses his distance and range pretty well. But again, coming off a knockout loss. Both these guys coming off pretty vicious KOs. I mean, they both were clearly knocked out. I would say Seleki's knockout was probably a little bit more brutal just because he got slammed on his head when he locked up a triangle. But I think the wrestling is really what paves the way for the winner here. And I think Selii isn't a slouch. Selii has better offensive jiu-jitsu than Dawson, but I think the person who's going to be controlling the position, which is going to really nullify the submission attempts of their opponent, is Grant Dawson. I think Dawson gets takedowns, gets on the inside, gets put in some submissions, but survives. He does have to watch his P's and Q's, because if he just goes in reckless and shoots reckless takedowns, Selii can catch him in a guillotine. Selii can catch him with a triangle off the bottom. Selii can find a way to work his way to his back. But I think Selii loses more scrambles in this fight than he wins. And I think we get a finish from Grant Dawson. I'm going to say a TKO via ground and pound from Grant Dawson. I'm more of a fan of Selii. I'd like to see Selii win, but I think the wrestling is what makes the clearest difference. While I think Selii is probably the better technical striker on the feet, I've always been a pretty big fan of Selii. I think he's the better striker on the feet. I think he's got better jiu-jitsu when it comes to technical, ability and technicalities with the grappling and positional awareness, but I think the wrestling of Dawson, the top control, the ability to win the scrambles, and the ability to look for subs himself and land ground and pound, I think that's really what makes a difference, and I think he can push a higher pace over 15 minutes than Joe Selii. Would I be surprised if Selii clipped Grant Dawson with something on the feet, clipped him with a check hook, clipped him with a right hand? No, I would not be surprised if Selii hurt him, because I think Selii has better striking than Dawson, but I think wrestling paves the way here. I'm going to go with a late second round ground and pound TKO for Grant Dawson to get back on track here. But would I lay money on him as a minus 300 favorite? Absolutely not. Would I be supremely confident in him to win this fight? Nope, not based off that KO loss to Bobby Green. So I'm going to go Grant Dawson, late second round ground and pound TKO. But like I said, I would not be surprised if we got an upset here, but I got to go with Dawson. Up next, we've got a battle in the middleweight division, and one of my favorite fights to talk about on this card, between Cesar Almeida, coming off his second round TKO victory over Dylan Budka in his UFC debut, taking on another kickboxing and striking standout with better grappling than Almeida in Roman Kopylov. 5-0 for Almeida, 12-3 for Roman Kopylov. I think this fight is going to be a lot closer than some people may think. I think Almeida is getting a little bit of disrespect. I think he got disrespected coming into the Budka fight. People just thinking that Budka was going to close that distance off, push him against the cage, and get takedown after takedown after takedown, and eventually just ground and pound or submit him. Yeah, he got a couple takedowns, but Almeida stayed patient, worked his way to the fence, worked his way up the fence with the wall walks, broke off most of the takedown attempts, stayed alive and stayed calm, and then eventually just started unleashing when Budka had him in those takedown attempts against the cage with big hooks, elbows over the top, knees, and, just basically fucked him up in round 2 and then got a knockout in that round. I think Almeida is going to be able to compete with Kopylov on the feet. I think the striking is going to be close, but I do give the advantage to Almeida. I know in MMA it's different. Just because you are a world-class striker outside of MMA doesn't mean that you're going to do the best inside the UFC. I think the best thing I've seen from Almeida so far is the fact that when he gets taken down, he doesn't panic. He stays patient. He tries to work up the wall, tries to work up the cage, and get back to the center. The difference between the Budka fight and the Kopylov fight here is Kopylov is a much, much, much better striker, night and day, compared to Dylan Budka. Budka is strictly a wrestler with big power, big overhand, kind of like a Walmart version of Chad Mendes. That's the way that I describe Dylan Budka's style, with more of a submission-based game than Mendes had. But in this fight, Kopylov's going to be southpaw. He's going to be looking for that left back kick to the body, the left head kicks, the left straight down the middle. And he's very live for a knockout here. But, like I said, I think people are discrediting and disrespecting Cesar Almeida coming in. He's again an underdog just like the last time out. But I think Cesar Almeida is going to be able to compete with Kopylov on the feet. I mean, there's not really much that this guy hasn't seen. I mean, facing Alex Pereira multiple times in kickboxing, there's not much he hasn't seen. I think his record's like 40-7 or something in professional kickboxing. So he 47 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw, 1 no contest. But in his losses in kickboxing, he never got knocked out, never got finished. All of his losses came by decision. Out of his 47 wins, over half of them came by KO with 27 knockouts or TKOs. I think Almeida can knock out Roman Kopylov. I do think Kopylov can knock out Almeida as well. Like we said, southpaw fighter. Going to be looking for that back kick to the body. Going to be looking for the left head kick, the straight left down the middle. He's got a very good rear bolo punch to the body. I think it would serve him well to work the body here against Cesar Almeida. The MMA experience goes to Kopylov. I think Kopylov would be very smart to use his wrestling early and use it often. We've seen he has really good takedown defense, but in this fight, it's not going to be so much about how good his takedown defense is. It's going to be how good is his wrestling offense, pushing Almeida up against the cage, getting takedowns, controlling from the top, and landing big ground and pound. I think Kopylov is nowhere near as good as an offensive grappler as Budka was, and seeing how Almeida did get taken down but survived and worked his way back up, and once he smelled blood, he really poured it on his opponent. I like him in this fight against Kopylov. Yes, Kopylov can land a big head kick. Yes, he can land a straight left. Yes, he can rip those body shots, and he can knock out Cesar Almeida. I'm not completely discrediting, the work that Kopylov's done in his UFC career, but I think if you go back and you look at the Anthony Hernandez fight, Kopylov was getting outstruck by Anthony Hernandez. Hernandez has good striking. He's not a slouch by any means. I did pick Anthony Hernandez to win that fight by submission. But if you go back and you look at that fight, Kopylov, I think the reason he got outstruck was because he wasn't really respecting the striking of Hernandez because he was more worried about the takedowns. And he didn't get taken down for like the first 7 or 8 takedown attempts. But eventually, the striking of Hernandez started to work, which opened up the offensive wrestling, the takedowns, and the top control, which eventually led to him giving up his back and getting the rear naked choke and getting submitted at the end of round 2. I think in this fight, we're not going to have the submission threat. So he's going to be more comfortable on the feet. He's going to be more wide-eyed and ready to counter back. And I think he's going to be coming into this fight better equipped than his last fight against Hernandez. But I don't think Kopylov is like this unreal striker. Yes, he knocked out Claudio Ribeiro with a head kick. Yes, he knocked out Josh Fremd, ripped up his body and beat him up. He's got real good takedown defense, but I don't necessarily think he's going to need that in this fight against Almeida. And I think Almeida's going to be able to compete with Roman Kopylov on the feet. I mean, he fought some of the best kickboxers in the world, 47 fights, 27 KOs. Yes, MMA is different because you have to look out for the takedowns. I wouldn't be surprised if he got caught with a left head kick. I wouldn't be surprised if he got caught with a big knee and maybe he gets dropped and gets knocked out. But he didn't get knocked out in kickboxing. Different size gloves, different ounce gloves. It's a different thing, more weapons to worry about in mixed martial arts. But I think Almeida can hang on the feet against Roman Kopylov, and I think he's eventually going to find the timing of Kopylov, land the counters, be able to counter-strike against Kopylov, and stop the takedowns. The best path to victory for Kopylov, I really do believe, is offensively wrestling, pushing Almeida up against the cage, getting takedowns, and also striking. Mix it up. Be a mixed martial artist. Kopylov is no slouch. This is not an easy fight, but I am going to go with Almeida to find another TKO. I think he finds a late second round or early third round TKO against Kopylov. I think he's going to find the range, find the distance, find the timings, get taken down probably once or twice, but work his way back up. Maybe Kopylov goes for a submission. I think Almeida's going to defend it and work his way back up, and then he's just going to start pity-patting. He's going to start picking him apart. Touch, pop, 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 pop. Bop, 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 body shot, bop, low kick, boom, boom, boom. And he's going to start finding the timing, which is going to make Kopylov panic. And I think he's going to eventually find that kill shot. He rocks him with something, maybe an elbow on the inside. Maybe he hurts him to the body with a knee. He rocks him, and then I think he lands some more elbows up against the cage, rips the body one more time, and I think he drops him with a body shot at the end of the second round. I'm going to go with Cesar Almeida to get the job done here via late second round body shot TKO against Roman Kopylov. This is not an easy fight. This is not a gimme pick, but I'm going to go with Almeida. I think people are going to be surprised how good he looks in this fight, just like some people were surprised with his performance against Budka and the defensive wrestling and the ability to work his way back up. Kopylov is a much tougher fight than Budka, but it's also going to be contested in the areas where Cesar Almeida is the most comfortable, which is mainly in the striking, and I think he has good enough defensive wrestling and a get-up game to, defend submissions and work his way back up and do some damage. So late second round body shot TKO for Cesar Almeida. I'm going with the underdog again. Second fight in a row, I'm going with him in the UFC. But yeah, I like Almeida, late second round body shot TKO. All right, the next fight up is on the main card in the welterweight division between Randy Rude Boy Brown, coming in with a record of 18-5, taking on Oleksiejczuk dos Santos, who comes back with a record of 24 victories, 7 losses, and 1 draw, which came in his last fight against Rinat Fakhretdinov. I think this fight, honestly, is kind of a hard one to call. I see a lot of people heavy on Randy Brown. That knockout over Muslim Salikov was beautiful. The 1-1-2, getting off on the angle and just dropping him, then following up with a hammer fist and knocking him out. Randy Brown is a guy who looks real good and real clean when he's able to dictate the range. Very similar to a fight that we talked about earlier. The one is escaping me. Which one are we talking about? Andre Lima, the first fight we talked about with Andre Lima. They look very good when they're able to dictate the range and the distance, but I think the durability of Randy Brown is what concerns me the most in this fight. Yes, he's going to be at a big reach disadvantage, is Oleksiejczuk dos Santos. He's going to have to get on the inside, he's going to have to work his way in, and he's going to have to land a big shot. We know that that's what we're looking for here in this fight. And if Randy Brown's able to keep Selii away from him, land big front kicks and teep kicks to the body, use his jab to circle away, 1-2s down the middle, yeah, he can pick apart dos Santos on the outside. 78-inch reach to a 73-inch reach, so he's going to be at a 5-inch reach advantage, along with a what about the height? Along with a 4-inch reach advantage, or a height advantage as well. So 4-inch height advantage, 5-inch reach advantage. Brown's going to want to stay on the outside, pick him apart. And we've seen Selii get hurt. We've seen him get dropped. We've seen him, we saw him get dropped against Rinat Fakhretdinov right away in the first round and then survive the ground and pound, survive any submissions. Second round went to Rinat again, but Selii kind of picked it up, found his way into the fight, and then was able to hurt Rinat really bad at the end of the third round, which swung the third round in his favor and caused that fight to be a draw. I thought Rinat won it 2-1, winning the first and second round, losing the third. But you know that dos Santos is going to keep that power. He's going to keep the heavy shots, whether it's kicks, knockouts, or kicks, punches, knockout power. He's going to have it for the full 15 minutes. We're talking about a guy in dos Santos who beat the ever-living shit out of Benoit Saint-Denis. And I was the one who picked Benoit Saint-Denis to finish Dustin Poirier. Poirier came in and knocked him out. But up until then, Benoit Saint-Denis looked like a marauder, a monster in the UFC. This is also a guy who got a spinning wheel kick KO against the former middleweight champion in Sean Strickland. I mean, you're forgetting, yes, these fights were a long time ago, but wins over Benoit Saint-Denis, a dominating win, and then a knockout over the former champion in Strickland. Lost the decision to Nicholas Dalby. Dalby obviously is, finds ways to win fights that he shouldn't win. Getting a knockout over Gabriel Bonfim in his last fight, last one out. Getting a decision win over Warley Alves. Winning fights again where he just shouldn't be winning, at least on paper. But I think Dos Santos has the ability to get on the inside and has the power to hurt Randy Brown. The biggest thing that Brown suffers from is leaving his chin in the air and getting knocked out, leaving his chin in the air and getting hurt, and then getting submitted like he did against Jack Della Maddalena. And if you can close that distance and land big shots, I think Randy Brown can get finished in this fight. I know he's going to be at a reach advantage. I know he's going to be fighting on the outside, skating around the outside. He looked real good against Salikov. That was another fight where I picked against Randy Brown. And it's, again, the durability, the curse of the durability. They look really good in some fights and look really bad in others. And it just really depends on the stylistic matchup and the style of fighter that they're fighting. But I think Dos Santos is durable enough to survive big shots from Randy Brown. Yes, I do think Brown has power and power to hurt Dos Santos at range, but I think Dos Santos is going to work his way in. I think he can land those big wheel kicks like he landed against Strickland. I think he's going to work the body. I eventually just see him getting on the inside against Randy Brown and landing a big hook, a big overhand, landing a spinning kick to the body that hurts Randy Brown. He's going to land a big shot and eventually get on the inside, but I don't think it's going to be like a first round finish. But I do think the longer that the fight goes, again, this is something I've said for like the entire card, I think in the midpoint of the second round, in the beginning of the second round, going into the third round, I think that's where Dos Santos finds his timing. The first round's going to be hard because I think Brown's going to be on his bike. He's going to be using, the fakes and feints, the teeps to the body, the jab, circling with the jab to set up the right hand. And, we saw Dos Santos get dropped in the first round heavy against Renat, who's nowhere near the technical striker of a Randy Brown. So Brown could clip him. He could keep him at distance and beat him up. But I think eventually Dos Santos finds his way into range, finds his way past that reach advantage, and lands, a big elbow. Not an elbow, but a big overhand, a big head kick. He lands a big shot on the chin of Randy Brown and makes him do the chicken dance. And then I think he jumps on him and gets him out of there. So I'm going to go with Elizeu Zaleski Dos Santos. I'm not going to pick against him again. I'm going to go Dos Santos to win via second round knockout against Randy Brown. I don't think it comes in round one. I think round one probably goes to Randy Brown staying on the outside. But I got to go with Dos Santos here. I think he finds his way in. He's durable. Even when he gets hurt, he can find a way to come back. And I think he gets on the inside and lands a big shot on the chin of Randy Brown, drops him and gets him out of there. So give me Elizeu Zaleski Dos Santos to get the job done here against Randy Rude Boy Brown via second round TKO. All right, up next we've got a battle in the heavyweight division between Jailton Almeida, coming off that first round TKO against Curtis Blades, taking on Alexander Romanov. 17-2, for Romanov to 20-3 on the side of Almeida. I don't really care about this fight. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time breaking this fight down. I mean, if you want a heavy technical breakdown on the fight, then, you could probably get it somewhere else. But I think the better wrestler is going to be Romanov. If he can constantly get takedowns and control from the top position and land ground and pound and maybe set up a submission, then yeah, he probably can beat Jailton Almeida. But I feel like Jailton has much better cardio. I feel like Jailton is much faster, much looser on the feet, much more relaxed when it comes to the striking. And I think he has the jiu-jitsu to, fight off of his back and put Romanov in bad positions. And we saw he had one round of cardio against Alexander Volkov. And Volkov is not a good grappler. He's not a good grappler. He gets taken down, he gets submitted, he gets controlled. And, we thought that was a fight where Romanov was going to be able to get those takedowns, rinse and repeat. But we know that if he can't dominate you early on and can't really control you and dominate you to a win, he's going to fall off a cliff. And I think in this fight, I'm going to side with Almeida to get the job done. I think Almeida is the more comfortable striker on the feet. I think he is going to be able to stuff some of the takedowns of Romanov. If he gets taken down, I think he tries to throw up submissions, work his way back up to the feet. And I think Almeida is just going to be a lot faster and a lot sharper than Romanov. Yeah, Romanov, like I said, can get the takedowns, can control Jailton Almeida on the ground, land big shots, look to set up a submission. And if he gets takedowns in round one and then they go into round two and he doesn't look tired and he gets more takedowns, more top control time, more ground and pound, then yeah, Romanov will probably finish Almeida late. But I haven't seen cardio from him, and that look against Alexander Volkov was terrible. I mean, he had one round of cardio and then he just, like I said, fell off a cliff and got finished. He had nothing left. after, you know, not being able to handle being the nail. He can only handle being the hammer. And I think in this fight, we saw Jailton Almeida lose his last fight to Curtis Blades, but it was just like he shot in on a takedown, didn't set it up, and Blades just landed hammer fists over and over and over again. Almeida didn't let go of the takedown and got finished. I don't want to call that a fluke victory, but in a way, it kind of is a fluke. Like, we didn't get to see much of Almeida in that fight. There's not much we can take away from that fight. But fights up until then, we know he can wrestle. We know he can get takedowns. We know he can continue to get takedowns for 5 rounds. We know that he's probably going to be at a massive speed advantage considering he's a former light heavyweight coming up to the heavyweight division. And I know he's got good jiu-jitsu. He's got much better technical striking. And I think Almeida wins this one. I think Almeida finds a TKO finish. I don't think he submits Romanov, but I would not be surprised if he, you know, the first round was close, but then Romanov falls off a cliff again cardio-wise and gets taken down, gets controlled, gives up a bad position, and gets choked out. But I'm going to go with a ground and pound TKO. I'll go with a 3rd round ground and pound TKO for Jailton Almeida against Alexander Romanov. I just didn't like the look against Volkov. I spoke pretty highly of Romanov in that fight as well, but I don't know. I'm not going to be really keen on picking Romanov in fights since that performance against Volkov, and I think he's going to come into this fight looking better, but I still think he's going to slow down, and I think the fighter who pushes a higher pace is going to be Almeida, and I think Almeida finds a 3rd round ground and pound TKO after surviving a tough first round, getting things going in round 2, and then just beating him up in round 3. So give me Jailton Almeida to get back on the winning track, defeating Alexander Romanov via 3rd round ground and pound TKO. All right, next fight up is another interesting one at 185 pounds between Kevin the Trailblazer Holland, who comes in with a record of 25 victories and 11 losses, taking on Michał Oleksiejczuk, coming in with a record of, I believe, 19-7, 18-7, something like that. Let me see. 19-7. Listen, I think Kevin Holland's going to look real good in this fight, and I think he gets an early finish. I think later on in the fight, if the fight goes into the midpoint of the 2nd round and into the 3rd round, then that probably means that Oleksiejczuk's able to kind of bob and weave, work his way on the inside, land good shots to the body, come back up top with good boxing combinations, and just kind of outwork Kevin Holland over 15 minutes. But Kevin Holland got beat up bad against Michael Venom Page. That was a fight where I'm pretty proud that I was one of the few people who picked Michael Venom Page to beat Kevin Holland, because I know a lot of people were very heavy on Holland going into that one. But I just knew that the style matchup wasn't good. Oleksiejczuk is going to be another stylistic matchup that's difficult in certain ranges, but Holland's going to have the reach advantage. Holland's going to be better on the outside. Holland's going to be landing those long 1-2s, you know, check hooks, can land vicious back fists from weird angles, and can fall back on submissions if the striking isn't going his way. If Oleksiejczuk shoots a bad takedown, he can grab his neck and get a submission. We've seen him submit multiple guys in the UFC, but it seems that the only thing people really talk about with Holland is his striking, but you have to worry about his grappling and his submissions as well, because this guy is no slouch on the ground. He's a black belt or a brown belt under Travis Lutter, and we saw him in his UFC debut on short notice, coming off the Contender Series against Thiago Santos. He put Santos in some bad positions at certain points in that fight. He's going to be at a 3-inch height advantage in this fight and a 8-inch reach advantage, or a 7-inch reach advantage in this fight against Oleksiejczuk. The jab, the front kicks to the body, the 1-2s, the counter right hand as Oleksiejczuk tries to close the distance. Oleksiejczuk has to get on the inside. He has to be a marauder. He has to walk through the fire, get on the inside, land vicious hooks to the body, knees, uppercuts, overhands, and just make this fight very uncomfortable for Kevin Holland. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Holland's going to snipe him. I think Holland's going to, play a little bit early, but he can't play around for too long with Oleksiejczuk, because Oleksiejczuk can find that chin. He's got big power on the feet. He's got really solid boxing. His hands are the best part of his game, and he's got vicious ground and pound if Holland, tries to pull guard and fall to his back or jumps for an omoplata but doesn't get it. The hammer fists and the overhands and the ground and pounds on the floor, not overhands, but the hammer fists, the straight punches, the big ground and pound, that's a big, big problem for Holland if he winds up on his back. But I think the range and distance is what's going to be the biggest key to victory for Kevin Holland here, and I think he's going to clip Oleksiejczuk early in round 1. I think he's going to hurt him, clip him, and then Oleksiejczuk's going to kind of like fall into a front headlock and get wrapped up in a Darce choke and get submitted. I'm going to go with Kevin Holland, the Trailblazer Kevin Holland, to get back on the winning track against Michał Oleksiejczuk, catching him with a big shot coming in and then wrapping up his neck in a Darce choke. Give me Kevin Holland to get the job done here via first-round Darce choke submission against Michał Oleksiejczuk. Would I be surprised if it happened in round 2? No, not really. I would be surprised if it gets to round 3. I don't think the fight gets to round 3, but if it does, I think that's more Oleksiejczuk getting on the inside and slowing down Kevin Holland. If you're going to play Oleksiejczuk, I would play KO 2-3, and then if I'm going to play Holland, I would probably play submission round 1 and round 2. But I think he clips him coming in because he's going to be at such a big reach advantage. He's going to clip him coming in, grab him in that front headlock, and lock up that Darce choke. So give me Kevin Trailblazer Holland via first-round Darce choke submission against Michał Oleksiejczuk. And now we move to the co-main event of the evening in the UFC's middleweight division between the former UFC middleweight champion in Sean Strickland taking on Paulo the Eraser Costa. This is a great fight. This is a phenomenal matchup, actually. I picked Costa to beat Robert Whittaker in his last fight, and he almost knocked him out at the end of the first round with that vicious wheel kick. I have no idea how Whittaker survived that or how he didn't get knocked down from that. His legs went out. 20, 30 more seconds, he probably would have got finished, but he survived, and he came back, and he won that fight via decision, piecing up the lead leg of Costa with the calf kicks, jumping in or darting in with the 1-2, the head kick behind the cross, typical Robert Whittaker performances, using the jab, doubling it, tripling it. And looking at this fight, you got Sean Strickland 28-6, Paulo Costa 14-3. Equal height at 6'1", but a 4-inch reach advantage for Strickland. The reach advantage is important for Strickland because Strickland fights behind his jab. Strickland's going to be in that Philly shell, closed off stance, shoulder rolling everything, trying to parry with the backhand and just pop the jab. Parry, boom, pop the jab. Parry, jab, cross. Overhand right, left hook. Jab, overhand right, left hook. All of his shots that come off the jab, they're never really straight. He uses a lot of looping punches. It's overhand rights, big wide right hooks, big left hooks, and then just going back on the jab. Going back on the jab. Good low kicks sometimes. Sometimes he'll throw that good front kick, like stabbing front kick to the body. And the one thing I will say is that I've seen Paulo Costa have issues with the jab against Robert Whittaker, and I saw him have issues with the jab against Uriah Hall. The Uriah Hall fight is something that a lot of people forget in Paulo Costa's career. Yes, Costa was able to work his way on the inside, land some big body shots, land a shot up top, and drop Uriah Hall and get a TKO in that fight when he was undefeated going into the title fight against Adesanya. I believe after the Uriah Hall fight, he went and either fought Johnny Hendricks or he went and fought Yoel Romero, but that's besides the point. Paulo Costa, I feel like, is a good kryptonite to the style of Strickland because Strickland doesn't have a ton of power, but we did see him drop Israel Adesanya, so we know that he does have some power behind his shots. He's got a good jab, a good straight right hand. He's got a good left hook. He can counter your hooks with his straight right hand. He throws it just straight right to the target, just like his jab. But the difference is, with that Philly shell shoulder roll style, the biggest thing to get through that is head kicks, wheel kicks, overhands, and hooks. The overhands and the hooks of Paulo Costa are what's going to win him this fight against Strickland. And the one thing I can draw back on is the fight with Alex Pereira. Now, I know what you're going to say. Well, Pereira has the best left hook in the game. He can knock out anyone with that left hook, and that's true. And that is definitely something you have to take into consideration when looking at the, technical differences for this fight. That, yes, Pereira has one of the best left hooks in the game. If somebody else lands that left hook on Strickland's chin, does it do as much damage? No, probably not, because, like I said, Pereira has the best left hook in all of combat sports, including MMA and kickboxing. But I think the power, the body kicks, the head kicks of Costa, he could get stuck behind the jab for the most part. He could get stuck behind the jab, and the jab could set up the power shots for Strickland in this fight. But this is going to be a 3-rounder, not a 5-rounder. At least to my knowledge, it's a 3-rounder. If it was a 5-rounder, I would definitely give the advantage to Strickland. I think Strickland could drown Costa over 5 rounds. He'd have the better cardio in round 4 and round 5. But this is a 3-round fight, and I think the 3 rounds makes this fight a lot more competitive than people want to give Paulo Costa credit for. Let me see, just to make sure it's not a 5-rounder. Oh, never mind. It is a 5-rounder. It's a 5-minute round fight. Okay, that changes things. So in a 5-round fight, I would give the advantage to Strickland in round 4 and round 5. But it's just, can he survive the early rounds against Paulo Costa and you know, cruise his way to a win and get a late TKO? Judging on the fact that now I know it's a 5-rounder and I thought it was originally a 3-rounder, I think that Strickland can win via TKO in round 4 and round 5, but the first 3 rounds are going to be the most dangerous rounds for him against Costa. If Costa wins, it's an early knockout. Either a big head kick. He's got a good lead switch kick to the head from orthodox. He's got a good question mark kick off the back leg, a good roundhouse kick to the head off the back leg, good straight right, beautiful left hook, good shots to the body. I think the left hook is, again, going to be a big issue for Sean Strickland in this fight based off that Philly shell style. But I do think he's bound to get hit with a few head kicks just by the way he defends. He'll reach and parry with the backhand, or he'll kind of shoulder roll and like down block with the rear hand to kind of like catch it, but he's like X blocking almost. I guess that's what you would call it, kind of like an X block. Catching and then catching on the shoulder. I think that over 5 rounds, I give the advantage to Strickland. So I'm going to start off saying one thing, and then I'm changing it the longer this breakdown goes. You know, but that's how it goes. I didn't know it was 5 rounds, now I do. 4 and 5, they go to Strickland, and Strickland probably could finish Paulo Costa in the 4th and 5th round, just with volume, attrition, working the body, landing the jabs over and over. And like I said, we saw him get pieced up with the jab of Uriah Hall early in that fight, getting his nose pieced up, getting popped. I think Strickland's going to get knocked out. Maybe I'm just too big of a fan of Paulo Costa, but I seem to have a decent read on Strickland fights in the UFC. You know, not the best. I can't get everything right, but I think I've got a pretty good idea of how he fights. He's going to have the advantage in round 4 and round 5 with the volume. Costa is going to slow down, but I think he comes into this fight more prepared. I think he comes into this fight probably the best we've seen him in terms of training camp, cardio, everything. And I think he finishes Strickland in the first 3 rounds. I'll go with a 2nd round knockout for Paulo Costa. I think he's going to land. It's either going to be a left hook as Strickland tries to like throw a jab. He's going to counter it, boom, land a big left hook and hurt him. Or he's going to land a head kick and he's going to knock Strickland out. We saw with Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, even though their guard isn't exactly the same, I would say Poirier's guard is a little bit tighter with the way he shoulder rolls and blocks the head kicks. And it's funny because we're going to be talking about Poirier next, but the way he blocks his punches, I think it's a little bit tighter of a guard than Strickland. But Strickland's defense looks so awkward, but the one thing you can do to combat that is body kicks and head kicks. And we saw in the first round against Abus Magomedov, he was getting hit with a few big head kicks, got hit with some big right hands, got taken down. I think Costa can use offensive wrestling in this fight as well. We saw him be able to grapple with one of the best grapplers in the middleweight division in Luke Rockhold, where Rockhold could probably out-grapple almost everybody in that division, even to this day, even though he's not an active fighter in the UFC anymore. But I think Costa finds a head kick in this one. I'm going to go with the lead head kick because I think a lot of people are going to expect like a question mark kick or something like that. I think he lands a lead head kick as Strickland like throws his jab. He's going to time it and like bring that kick right around and catch Strickland on the chin. Rock him. He's going to jump on him, land some shots to the body, pour it on, and get him out of there in round 2. I'm going to go with Paulo the Eraser Costa to find that little switch kick or lead head kick and then follow up with some shots to get him out of there. Give me Paulo Costa via round 2 TKO in the co-main event of UFC 302, getting back on the winning track after that loss to Robert Whittaker in a pretty close fight for the first couple rounds. But I got the Eraser here against the former champion. And now we get to the main event of the evening for the UFC Lightweight Championship between the champion and Islam Makhachev taking on the number 4 ranked lightweight in Dustin the Diamond Poirier, who's coming off a 2nd round knockout against Benoit Saint Denis. 25-1 for the champion and Makhachev, 30 wins, 8 defeats on the side of Dustin Poirier. Man, I mean, the easy thing to say here is that Makhachev is getting better in the striking. He can compete with Poirier on the feet. He can take him down whenever he wants. He's just got to watch out for Poirier jumping the guillotine. He can get into the top position. He can land some good ground and pound. Allow Poirier to give up his back, take his back, and choke him out. Poirier got submitted with a rear naked choke against Khabib Nurmagomedov. But if you go back and you watch that fight, a lot of people seem to forget that Poirier actually clipped Khabib in that fight. He landed that stance changing from southpaw to orthodox overhand right. The same shot that he knocked out Max Holloway, well, not knocked out, but hurt Max Holloway with. In this fight, I think a lot of people are completely counting out Dustin Poirier. And don't get me wrong, it makes sense to count him out because we've seen him go up against these very highly touted grapplers and he jumps the guillotine, and he actually almost submitted Khabib with a guillotine too. Khabib said it was close, but it wasn't close enough. But man, that second attempt on that guillotine, it was so close. I know you might hear different from other people, but man, that was close. And he said he's going to jump guillotine and keep jumping guillotine, and it doesn't matter. I think if he jumps guillotine against Islam, there's one situation where I think it can work. But he has to have him either dead tired, where he has a cardio advantage over Islam and Islam shoots a bad takedown and gets choked out, because I definitely think that's a case that could happen. Very slim, but it could happen. Or he has to hurt Makhachev with a punch, like an uppercut. Hurt him with that lead uppercut or hurt him with a right hook. And as he hurts him, Islam shoots the takedown and he jumps the guillotine and chokes him out after he's like basically knocked out on the takedown attempt from getting clipped on the way in. The thing that I think makes this fight so interesting is the fact that both of these guys are southpaw. Islam Makhachev got knocked out by Adriano Martins, who was also a southpaw, and coincidentally, it was with the lead right hook. He stepped in, boom, cracked him on the way in and knocked him out. Vicious knockout. Adriano Martins. That was the only loss in Islam Makhachev's career, and it was by knockout. Coincidentally, against a southpaw. I think Martins might have been orthodox, but at the time he knocked him out, it was in southpaw. The lead right hook is the best punch of Dustin Poirier. Poirier is actually naturally an orthodox fighter who fights southpaw because his power side is in that lead side. You saw against Benoit Saint-Denis, he got taken down multiple times, got his back taken, got put in a rear naked choke, but he defended it. I actually think that the Benoit Saint-Denis fight was a good catalyst and a good preparation fight for Makhachev, because we know Makhachev's going to go for takedowns. We know Makhachev's going to get to the top position. We know he's going to try to take the back of Poirier, and we know he's going to try to choke him out. Now, Benoit Saint-Denis rushed a few positions, but it was kind of similar to the positions that he's probably going to be put in. And facing Khabib, think about it like this. The only fighter to fight Khabib and Islam is Dustin Poirier. Why that's important is because Poirier sees a fighter. It was in the cage with a fighter who's technically coaching Islam Makhachev. A fighter who I don't believe is as well-rounded as Islam, but I think he was more dominant in the grappling than Makhachev, but Makhachev is more powerful on the feet. He's a lot better with the striking. He can compete better with the striking, and he's much more equipped to compete with Dustin on the feet than Khabib was. But being more equipped to compete with Poirier on the feet might give Poirier more chances to win the fight, because he might think that he doesn't need the takedown, he doesn't need the wrestling, he doesn't need the top control or the wrist rides or setting up submissions. He might just come into this fight and try to strike with Poirier. You don't want to give Poirier any openings. This guy's a veteran. This guy has more fights than Makhachev. 26 pro fights compared to 38 pro fights. This will be Dustin Poirier's 39th professional MMA fight. Now, is Islam expected to win? Yes. Do I think Islam could knock out Poirier on the feet? I do. I think he can clip him with that straight punch down the middle, and I think he can catch him with a head kick. Poirier got knocked out with a head kick by, oh my God, Justin Gaethje. We called Justin Gaethje by knockout in that fight. He's been knocked out with head kicks before. We saw Makhachev catch Volkanovski with a head kick, but Volkanovski was a lot shorter, so it made the head kick more readily available, because if Volkanovski moved his head, he would kind of be ducking under the head kick, which would allow it to skim over the top. Poirier is going to be, close to the same height of Islam, where that head kick isn't going to be as readily available because he's not as short as Volkanovski was. That's what made that kick be there and allowed that kick to be open against Volkanovski. But you got to think about this too. Dustin Poirier, this is his last shot at the gold. He's probably never going to get another one. If he loses this fight, Poirier probably retires. I'm going to be honest with you. I think being that this is his last shot, we're going to see the best version of Dustin Poirier that we've ever seen step into the octagon. And he's also going to be, in my opinion, the most equipped fighter to beat Makhachev, because he's felt top pressure similar to Makhachev by fighting Khabib. He just got out of a fight with Benoit Saint Denis where he got taken down, where he got his back taken, where he got that body triangle put in, where he got put in a rear naked choke. He gave up the same positions, but he stayed calm and he was able to get out of it. He jumped the guillotine a lot, and I'm sure he's going to jump the guillotine again in this fight. But the one thing I did like is that the longer that the fight went on with Saint Denis, even though it was only 2 rounds, he went from jumping the guillotine to just getting a standing guillotine. He went to a standing guillotine, and then he would let it go and strike. He clipped him with a left hand, boom, dropped him, jumped the guillotine or grabbed the guillotine. He didn't get it, and then he continued to just pour on the pressure, straight left hand, countered with the right hook as Saint Denis tried to throw the back power right hand, dropped him and knocked him out. I think Poirier should not jump the guillotine in this fight, but I would not be surprised if he does it. But if he does, he has to have Islam so hurt that he gets clipped with a shot on the way in and gets wrapped up, or he gets clipped with a shot, changing levels, and with an uppercut gets rocked and gets put in it, and he's not all the way there. I mean, that's really the only way he can get this guillotine. But he almost got Khabib with it. And again, this is the only guy to ever fight Khabib and Islam Makhachev in the octagon. Nobody else has fought both. That says something. Obviously, I believe Islam is a more well-rounded fighter than Khabib. He's more well-rounded and more equipped on the feet. I wouldn't be surprised if he caught, Poirier with a head kick. He just got knocked out with a head kick by Justin Gaethje. I wouldn't be surprised if the left head kick came through. But in Southpaw versus Southpaw, the head kick isn't really there. It's the jabs, it's the straights, and it's the outside calf kicks. Poirier, really good calf kicks. We saw him use it against Conor McGregor over and over and over again. That is another southpaw. Yes, he got knocked out in the first fight, but he beat him in the second fight with a knockout and then beat him again and broke his leg in the third fight. I feel like everything's been leading up to Poirier finally getting the title. This is the third time he's fighting for the Undisputed Championship. The first 2 times he got submitted with a rear naked choke. Almost caught Khabib with a big shot on the feet. Almost wrapped up Khabib in a guillotine. But then he got out and then choked him out. Got submitted against Charles Oliveira, but dropped him a few times in that fight as well. But then gave up his back, got his back taken, jumped his back, rear naked choke. Now he's fighting again for the Undisputed Championship. The biggest difference, I believe, is the fact that this fight is not in Abu Dhabi. It's in the U.S. There's going to be more fans there for Poirier. And this is Islam going into enemy territory. The last time he went into enemy territory, he almost lost his title against the 145-pound champion at the time in Alexander Volkanovski. I believe Alexander Volkanovski won that fight. Obviously it didn't go his way. The judges gave it to Islam. It was a split decision, but I believe Volkanovski won 3 out of those 5 rounds. And he definitely closed the fight better in the 4th and the 5th. I think when we get to the championship rounds, the fighter who's going to have the better cardio to push through those championship rounds is the guy who's been there more, and that's Dustin Poirier. Poirier's got 4th-round finishes under his belt. He still has power, combinations, boxing ability, same side combinations with the punches, rip to the body, up the middle, over the top, and he can pour it on in the 4th and the 5th. He knocked out Justin Gaethje in their first fight in the beginning of round 4, put like a 10, 15, 20 punch combination on him. We know that the better cardio is going to be Poirier in the later rounds, but if Islam continues to get takedowns over and over again, if he gets those, wrestling exchanges, gets the top position, goes for submissions, but can't get the subs, I think Poirier's going to be, I don't think he's going to be fresh by any means, but I think he's going to have the ability to push harder in the 4th and the 5th round than Islam is. And I know the easy pick is to take Islam. I mean, everybody's probably going to be doing it, and they have a right to. But I think third time's the charm. I'm going to go with Dustin Poirier. I'm going to go with Dustin Poirier via a knockout. He has to survive early. He has to get up from the takedowns, work his way up, defend rear naked chokes. And I think he was given the perfect opportunity to do that against Benoit Saint Denis. Even though the fight didn't last very long, he got put in very similar situations to the Khabib fight, which will probably be very similar situations in this Islam fight. But Islam is more comfortable on the feet, like we talked about, and can knock him out. But I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into storylines. Maybe Islam comes out here and dominates Poirier, gets him out of there quick. But I'm going to go with Dustin. I'm going to go with Dustin Poirier to get the Undisputed Championship via a 3rd round TKO against Islam Makhachev. I think he will be able to defend the bad positions. I think he's going to be put in a lot of bad positions. I think he's going to get hit with some good big strikes from Makhachev. But I think he's going to be calm, patient, and this is the best Dustin Poirier we're going to see step into the octagon. So I'm going with new UFC lightweight champion in Dustin the Diamond Poirier to win the undisputed UFC lightweight championship via a 3rd round TKO over Islam Makhachev. All right, that's it for my UFC 302 preview, predictions, and breakdown. Obviously, this prediction and breakdown video was recorded a week in advance. The fights are not this Saturday. They are next Saturday. I'm sorry, June 1st from the, what's the arena? The Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey? Is that it? Yes, the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. I'm your host, Double M, and let's enjoy the fights, not this weekend, but next weekend. All right, everybody.